Welcome to this special edition of The Investigators. This is Thursday, June 11th, when we are recording this. I have Kyle Payne with me, also Daryl Harris. We've just learned today that the Nevada Parole Board denied parole for former Las Vegas Raider Henry Ruggs. You guys, this is big news.
It is. Henry Ruggs he pleaded guilty. And he got a sweetheart deal. He got, was it 3 to 10 years?
3 to 10 years.
They arranged that. His attorneys, the prosecutors, the judge accepted it. I think for the terrible nature of what happened, he was flying. He was speeding so fast, and he hit a woman and her dog in the car. They burned to death. Let's just be honest about it. And he got a sweetheart deal, and there was every ability. You covered the parole hearing that he was going to be out after a couple of years.
Yeah, we were inside that room. We were the only TV station there. The newspaper was there, the Review Journal, but we were there. And he appeared virtually from prison, and he sort of made his case. He was respectful. He acknowledged it would be hard to find forgiveness. Again, he was driving drunk in 2021, speeding 156 miles per hour, according to police. He hits 23-year-old Tina Tintor and her dog. She dies at that scene. Her vehicle bursts into flames. I mean, it was terrible.
Yes.
It was tragic. It still is tragic. And as you mentioned, his plea deal caused a lot of controversy. And when this crash happened, it made international headlines. Daryl, I want to bring you in. Talk about, at the time, who Henry Ruggs was then.
Yeah, definitely was a big time for the Raiders because some of the context around it on the sports side, which never really was the focal point of the story, and appropriately so. The Raiders were actually reeling from the John Gruden bombshell. That happened on October 11th, 2021. The Henry Ruggs crash happened November 2nd. And the Raiders have been here for about 6 years now, 6 seasons. And we know that they've only been to the postseason one time. That year was kind of on track to be one of their better seasons. And Ruggs was emerging. It was his second year in the NFL. He was a first-round high draft pick, came from Alabama, Crimson Tide, and he was coming into his own. But the team hit a road bump itself. There was the interim head coach who came in after Gruden resigned over the leaked emails lawsuit, which eventually became a lawsuit. And
still a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And Ruggs was a young man. Is a young man.
Yes. He was born in 1999,
right.
So he was barely 22
Today,
years old.
he's 27 years old.
So if he served his full sentence, let's say he'd be 35. If he were to get out in another 2 years, he'd be still under 30. And I'm guessing, Daryl, that if you're still in your 20s and you have that kind of God-given talent, you may have another chance at it.
Yeah, that's one of the on-field side effects or domino effects from this ruling today, is that if he were granted parole, it's the offseason currently right now. Folks are getting ready for training camp in the NFL. Doesn't have to be the Raiders, but he spoke about wanting to play again. So that was a possibility if he was given some freedom.
We talked about this big decision today that Henry Ruggs is denied parole, but I want to take our viewers back to the scene for a quick montage of why we're here and what unfolded.
I know somebody probably in there, but this is Ruggs right here.
This is the aftermath of the early morning crash police say caused by Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs.
I've never seen a case in my 41 years here in Las Vegas of a person who's charged with a crime driving in excess of 150 miles an hour.
I have no excuse and pray that accepting responsibility in my guilty plea can allow me to begin the healing process.
We pray that Henry Ruggs is blessed with the opportunity to be able to watch his beautiful daughter grow into the amazing woman she can be. And we pray that this terrible accident inspires positive change in the world.
And you guys, we talked about how controversial this plea deal was. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. The Clark County District Attorney's Office getting criticized. But what we heard behind the scenes is there were possibly some issues with the Las Vegas Metro Police investigation. And oftentimes, you guys know when we cover plea deals, sometimes a prosecutor might go for a deal where they believe that prison time will be guaranteed rather than taking something to a trial where it's not guaranteed. But you know, I think that image is burned into all of our minds of Tina Tintor's vehicle bursting into flames, knowing she was in there, just a 23-year-old woman losing her life. I do want to get to the parole hearing and what happened inside that room, but let's take a break. Welcome back. This is a special edition of The Investigators with Kyle Payne. I'm Vanessa Murphy. Also, Daryl Harris is joining us, and we are talking about this big news, this decision, the Nevada Parole Board denying parole for former Las Vegas Raider Henry Ruggs. He is serving time in prison for a deadly drunk driving crash. Now, we were the only TV station inside that room 1 month ago when Henry Ruggs was making his case to be released from prison. Here's our report from that day.
It goes live where I don't think of the pain I caused.
Henry Ruggs asking Nevada's parole board to grant his release from prison. The former Raider appearing virtually from Northern Nevada Correctional Center Monday in front of 2 commissioners in Las Vegas and loved ones of both the woman killed in the crash and Ruggs, including his father.
He has spent a great deal of time reflecting, praying, and asking God for forgiveness, as well as praying for the victim and her loved ones.
Thank you.
Ruggs began serving a 3 to 10-year sentence in 2023. Prosecutors say he drove 156 miles per hour with a blood alcohol level of more than twice the legal limit when he killed the 23-year-old woman and her dog as their vehicle went up in flames in 2021. Ruggs agreed to a plea deal and was represented by longtime criminal defense attorney David Chesnoff, who says Ruggs will continue to educate others about his deadly decision.
Sometimes being high profile makes it more of a burden, and I would most respectfully ask everybody to treat Henry the way they would anybody that comes before them, except for the fact that I think he's tried to do as much as humanly possible to send a message that his behavior was unacceptable.
Ruggs has shared his story with inmates and students, previously worked inside the governor's mansion, earned his college degree, completed a DUI course, and given lessons to other guys in prison he describes as a cardio class, all during his time in Nevada's Department of Corrections. But he also broke a rule last October, described only as non-compliance with travel arrangements, which he admits here was not the best decision. The board noting the 27-year-old is considered low risk, a factor which could be in his favor. And as this meeting concludes, one commissioner asks Ruggs if the roles were reversed, perhaps if he was a victim's loved one, would he want the deadly DUI driver to be released?
Dealing with tragedy is definitely not easy, and I don't expect the pain to ever be fully healed. It's something they have to live with forever, and now it's a hole in their family's dynamic now. If it were me, I would try my best to forgive that person for the decision they made, the tragedy at hand, but I would not say that it would be an easy decision to say that they should be released.
Well, we don't sit in judgment, but he's contrite there. And he even says to them, I don't know if I would let me out. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would let him out.
No, I mean, he started serving his 3 to 10 year sentence in August of 2023. Here we are in 2026, so 3 years.
Sure. Well, you mentioned that he, well, right. I think 3 years, maybe minus the time that, if there was any that he spent in jail awaiting trial when he got arrested, which was probably not very long. But you mentioned in your story that there was some skirmish, something that happened that a travel snafu that happened while he was behind bars in October. But before that, he was a model prisoner and worked at the governor's mansion.
Yeah.
Something that they would only give to a low risk, kind of low security model prisoner. So, it's a very complicated decision, but you can go in circles because the way this woman died, not to mention her dog. I bring this up, and I know it's hard, and I apologize to the viewers in advance, but I covered the sentencing, and I was going through all the video, and I said, those 911 calls are insane. And somebody said to me, you can't play them. She's screaming to death in the background. And that is
terrible.
Beyond.
Right.
And so, 3 to 10 years is a very good deal. And getting out in 3 or 5 or 7, he should be lucky regardless. But he did seem awfully contrite there.
I thought it was interesting. I spoke with a defense attorney earlier today about this decision, just to sort of get their thoughts, right? They're unrelated to this case. And I was shocked when the defense attorney said they were appalled that he received this deal and then he still broke a rule in prison, that he should be grateful he got 3 to 10 years when he was speeding, driving drunk, and killed Tina Tintor. Then he is a model prisoner. There is no doubt he is spreading the word to not drive drunk, and he is doing community service while serving his time, right? He's staying out of trouble until he then breaks a rule.
Right. And, you mentioned earlier about how the DA maybe took the bird in the hand deal because they were worried about the police investigation. I think the police would object to that characterization, that their investigation or what they gave the prosecutors wasn't enough. And I think we did a little reporting on that. But, 3 to 10 years is, let's just put it this way, it's not a deal that I would get. And he was extremely lucky. Obviously, I wouldn't want to spend one day in prison, but I also wouldn't want to have what happened to Tina Tintor to happen to me. And I think that's the back and forth. Look at her. Both of them. Goodness gracious.
And seeing her family inside that room during that parole hearing, there were 3 individuals there. They did not want to talk to the media. They did not speak publicly. They could have, but we do know they spoke with commissioners after everyone else seemingly left the room. We know that they filed a lawsuit against Henry Ruggs. There appears to be a settlement. We don't know the specifics of that settlement. I've reached out to their attorney today after this decision to see if they'd like to speak with us. My guess is they likely will not want to, but
there was a statement?
I saw their pain in that room, Kyle. There are no words. First, there's grief. Then she is so young, and then the way this happened, it was entirely preventable. I do want to read a statement from his attorney, David Chesnoff, also Richard Schoenfeld. They were both representing him. I'll do that when we come back. Welcome back to this special edition of The Investigators. I'm Vanessa Murphy, joined by Kyle Payne and Daryl Harris. We are talking about some big news today. Nevada's parole board denying parole for former Las Vegas Raider Henry Ruggs. You guys, we mentioned he's 27 years old. He's been in prison for about 3 years. He drove drunk and he killed Tina Tintor back in 2021. I mean, this is something, it made international headlines, but it really shook the community, in my opinion. Kyle, you weren't here yet, but you did cover the sentencing. I remember I was up north on assignment, but Daryl, you've been a longtime Las Vegas resident. What do you remember about that time?
No, yeah, I remember it vividly. I was actually a tours host at Allegiant Stadium working with the Raiders, and which is why the football element of the story sort of sticks out to me, because the team had some momentum. But we were just talking about the case and the jury trial, not the jury trial, but his hearing, seeking his release, and the case that he made for himself.
Yes.
This really does represent the duality of these very grim cases that we deal with all the time. I know I do the sports now, but I'm also a news producer. So the last 4 years, I listen and deal with all of the deadly crash cases and report and help you out, Vanessa, and our other anchors. So many times we hear from both sides.
Yeah.
We know that not all people who drive intoxicated hit somebody.
Right.
We know that he was, like you said, 22 years old at the time and has now had his name tarnished in perpetuity. This was a game-winning touchdown that happened on the road as time expired against the New York Jets, right a couple of weeks prior to his career ending. His rookie year, he played 7 games. He had 450 yards. He played 13 games. In his second year, in only 7 games, he had more yards than that. So it's a career that has went down the drain, which is very unfortunate. I wanted to emphasize my condolences to the Tintor family.
Yes.
I know the past 5 years has been very rough for them. I used to drive past the mural on Rainbow almost every day.
Beautiful mural.
And so it never left my mental. And it's really unfortunate on both sides. It's a lose-lose situation.
Yes.
In terms of his family is dealing with the repercussions. He will deal with them for a lifetime. And of course, we know that the outcome for the victims as well. But it's sad to think about when you think about all those things.
But this is real life. And should we all be held accountable for the mistakes we made when we were 22? But for the grace of God, go a lot of people who drive drunk and didn't do that and made a mistake that didn't have those terrible consequences. But you also can't forget one other giant element of this, which is celebrity and money and power and the kind of treatment that gives you in a court of law. Because like I said before, there is no one in this room, in this building on our block who would get that deal. Period. And, his attorney, he has one of the best, one of the most high profile in the country, David Chesnoff, who vouches for this guy.
I want to read his statement.
Okay,
I'm
good.
glad you brought him up.
He spoke at the hearing too, right?
He spoke at the hearing and he said he's a long-time Las Vegas criminal defense attorney. He said that's the first time he's done that.
Yeah, in 45 years.
Yeah. So the statement from David Chesnoff and Richard Schoenfeld, Mr. Ruggs and our office continue to feel the grief and loss suffered by Ms. Tintor's family. However, we are disappointed by the parole board's decision to deny parole despite overwhelming evidence of Mr. Ruggs having accepted responsibility for his conduct, having engaged in community outreach efforts related to DUI prevention, and having completed significant educational programs while in custody. While we respect the board's role, we disagree with its conclusion. And you know what, guys? He has gotten the word out about DUI prevention. But at the end of the day, the sentence is 3 to 10 years. The parole board did not have to release them, and the parole board made the decision to not release them. And you guys mentioned earlier, sort of, there's many people who have drank too much and driven and have not hurt someone or been held accountable. On the other side, this is 2026. There is Lyft. There is Uber. You are a Las Vegas Raider who is making money.
He probably could have hired a driver and bought a car for him.
Exactly.
Not involved whatsoever.
Oftentimes, look, it's Las Vegas. We have these teams here now.
We're adults.
I always wonder, and I've thought it, but I haven't said it on air. I sort of wonder, like, does the team ever think about perhaps, I don't want to call it a chaperone, but someone, you have young people in their 20s moving to Las Vegas, right? Who maybe are coming from a small city or something like that and don't really understand the dangers, right? It's a 24/7 hour town. You have a 24/7 town.
Yep.
You have the Las Vegas Strip. I mean, there are so many ways these players do not have to get in trouble.
Yeah, there was, the team did adjust its approach sort of following that. Whether it was the draft, the immediate next year or the one following that, the year they took Tyree Wilson, I tweeted at that time, I said, you should take Jalen Carter here, who was a prospect coming out of the University of Georgia. However, he had been involved in a crash racing a teammate months prior to the draft, in between his team winning the championship and the draft. And for that context, it was like, no, the Raiders kind of can't bring this person in here knowing the impact that intoxicated driving crash had on this valley. So they did sort of go away from that. Carter since has been clean and has become an all-pro player in the NFL. One other sports comparison I just want to inject was Michael Vick. Michael Vick, we know, went to jail for his charges against animals. Mm-hmm. He also returned to the NFL afterwards. So I'm just laying out some other examples of these incidents.
America loves a second chance, and he can get one. And you wouldn't necessarily blame, well, you would if you were the Tintor family, but you wouldn't necessarily blame, from an objective standpoint, the parole board for letting him go because he accepted responsibility and all that, and he seems contrite. But you also can't blame them for letting him in, for keeping him in.
Well, could you imagine the backlash if he was going to walk out of prison and the commissioners would have made that decision? Could you imagine the backlash?
Large.
And that is something that David Chesnoff mentioned of like, I hope you don't hold it against him that he's a celebrity, right? Sometimes people want to send a message. However, other people might say, well, he had the money, he had the connections to even have an attorney like David Chesnoff and get that deal in the first place.
I don't know, Vanessa. I think the die was cast when the deal was made. How are you going to blame the parole board for doing what's in their realm to say, okay, well, they're given the choice now, and so they have to look at it, given all the factors. And maybe they considered the backlash, but if the guy had been given 30 years, they still would have to make the decision and say the same thing. And, so it's not necessarily the parole board's issue that it was such a small amount of time, in my opinion.
And
I am surprised. I'm not going to say what I agree with or disagree. I am surprised that the parole board denied it. What were you going to say, Daryl?
That non-celebrities have also received maybe similar. I'm not using an example explicitly right now as we're talking, just in conversation, but we hear from those victims' families so many times after court hearings, after sentencings of how can that be?
How is my loved one's
life only worth a couple of years?
The 8 News Now investigators have done some DUI by death stories, and they even, I believe, changed the law after our team's reporting of it.
And it's difficult. It's difficult on the legal professionals, on law enforcement, to reach a decision that satisfies all parties.
Yeah.
I'm not coming for anybody.
Yeah, these breathalyzers aren't always universally accepted in court, and sometimes defense attorneys can poke holes at what you would think would be scientific data, blood tests, breathalyzer, whatever. So look, he says when he gets out, he wants to continue to spread his message, to go around and do good for people, and I hope he does. I hope that something positive can come from this. Daryl, you want to say something?
I guess, just last thought on my end, that if they did want to follow up with that message, perhaps the NFL could send a memo to say that we support, or I won't even say that, but if they were to just say that he will not return to the NFL, that does send a message.
It does.
Oh, wow. I don't see that happening.
No, me neither.
Though, do you?
No, they're not going to do that. They want to distance themselves from this. I also want to say, Vanessa, you have a story in our afternoon broadcast on television.
Yes.
Around the time this will be on.
Yes.
Tonight. And it was nice to see both of you under different circumstances.
Yes.
It would have been nicer.
And as Daryl mentioned, our thoughts and prayers out
constantly
to the Tintor family. Certainly this was a tragedy all around. Now Henry Ruggs will be in prison for at least another year. We will be back at it probably at another parole hearing in 2027 around this time. Thanks for joining us.